Ferrari is in crisis, as some team members want Carlos back. The FIA holds a special meeting after tragedy and all the latest F1 news. What if I told you that one of Formula One's biggest stars just delivered a shocking reality check about the championship fight that nobody saw coming? Charles Leclerc, the Ferrari driver who knows what it takes to compete at the highest level, just dropped two words that could change everything we think we know about this season's title race. Picture this: Max Verstappen, the four-time world champion, finds himself trailing by 69 points with just a handful of races remaining. Most drivers would throw in the towel, accept defeat, and start planning for next year. But Verstappen isn't most drivers. He's been clawing back points, winning races, and making what seemed impossible suddenly look within reach. Yet when asked about Max's chances of pulling off the greatest comeback in recent Formula One history, Leclerc's response was brutally honest and surprisingly definitive. The Monegasque driver didn't mince words when he said he'd be very surprised if Verstappen managed to secure his fifth consecutive championship. Think about that for a moment. This isn't some random pundit or social media commentator making predictions. This is Charles Leclerc, someone who races wheel to wheel with these drivers every other weekend, someone who understands the pressures, the politics, and the pure skill required to win at this level. But here's where it gets really interesting. Leclerc wasn't dismissing Verstappen's abilities. In fact, he praised the Dutchman's recent performances, acknowledging that Max isn't leaving anything on the table. The Red Bull driver has been extracting every tenth of a second from his car, maximizing every opportunity, and quite frankly, outperforming the McLaren drivers who currently lead the championship standings. Let's break down what's actually happening in this championship fight. Oscar Piastri sits at the top of the standings, with his McLaren teammate Lando Norris breathing down his neck. These two drivers have the fastest car on the grid for most of the season, yet they've been making mistakes when it matters most. Meanwhile, Verstappen has been doing what champions do, capitalizing on his rivals' errors while delivering flawless performances when his back is against the wall. The numbers tell a fascinating story. After the summer break, Verstappen has consistently outscored both McLaren drivers. His deficit to Piastri initially ballooned to over 100 points, making the championship seem like a foregone conclusion. But through sheer determination and clinical driving, he's managed to slash that gap to 69 points. In a sport where 25 points separate victory from defeat, that margin isn't insurmountable. So why is Leclerc so skeptical about Verstappen's chances? The answer lies in the mathematics of Formula One. With limited races remaining, Verstappen needs his rivals to falter significantly while he delivers perfect performances. It's not impossible, but it requires a level of consistency from Max and mistakes from the McLaren drivers that seems unlikely given their current form. Leclerc's assessment also reflects the reality of modern Formula One, where car performance often trumps driver talent. The McLaren MCL60 has been the class of the field for most of this season, giving Piastri and Norris a significant advantage. Even when they make errors, they're often fast enough to minimize the damage. Red Bull has made improvements to their car, bringing them closer to McLaren's pace, but closing that final gap has proven challenging. There's another layer to consider here. Leclerc himself is mathematically still in the championship fight, though he admits it would take a miracle. His Ferrari has shown flashes of brilliance, but lacks the consistency needed for a title challenge. The fact that even he, a driver capable of winning races and challenging for pole positions, considers his own chances slim, speaks volumes about how difficult it is to overcome a significant points deficit in modern Formula One. The psychological aspect cannot be ignored either. Piastri and Norris know they have the fastest car. They understand that conservative driving and smart race management will likely secure one of them the championship. They don't need to take the risks that Verstappen must take to close the gap. This puts additional pressure on the Red Bull driver to be perfect while hoping his rivals make unforced errors. What makes Leclerc's perspective particularly valuable is his unique position in this championship fight. He's close enough to the action to understand the nuances, but removed enough from the title fight to offer an objective assessment. When someone of his caliber expresses surprise at the possibility of a Verstappen comeback, it carries weight. The timing of these comments is also significant. They come after Verstappen's impressive back-to-back victories, performances that might have convinced some observers that the championship fight was back on. Leclerc's measured response serves as a reality check, reminding us that while anything is possible in Formula One, probability still matters. As we head toward the final races of the season, Leclerc's prediction might prove prophetic. The championship may indeed go to either Piastri or Norris, making this one of the rare seasons where Verstappen's dominance comes to an end. But if there's one thing Formula One has taught us over the years, it's that surprising outcomes are always possible. Whether Leclerc's surprise would be warranted remains to be seen, but his honest assessment has certainly added another intriguing dimension to what's shaping up to be a memorable championship finale. What if I told you that the most successful team principal in modern Formula One history might be plotting his comeback in the most unexpected way possible? Christian Horner's departure from Red Bull sent shockwaves through the paddock, but the latest rumors suggest his return could be even more explosive than his exit. After 2 decades of dominance with Red Bull, Horner's sudden dismissal following the British Grand Prix left fans stunned. This wasn't just any team boss getting the boot. We're talking about the mastermind behind 6 Constructors' Championships and 8 Drivers' titles. The man who guided Sebastian Vettel to 4 consecutive World Championships and then repeated that magic with Max Verstappen. But here's where things get interesting. Sources close to the situation reveal that Horner has officially severed all ties with Red Bull after reaching a staggering $100 million settlement. That's not just goodbye money, that's freedom money. And with the terms of his departure allowing him to return to Formula One for the 2026 season, the question isn't if Horner will be back, but where. Enter Flavio Briatore, the controversial former Renault boss who made his own return to Formula One last year as Alpine's executive advisor. These 2 titans of the sport couldn't be more different in their approaches, yet former Ferrari and Renault driver Giancarlo Fisichella believes they could form what he calls a perfect compromise at Alpine. Think about it. You have Horner, the methodical mastermind who built Red Bull into a championship-winning machine through careful planning and strategic brilliance. Then there's Briatore, the flamboyant Italian known for his aggressive tactics and political maneuvering. On paper, it sounds like a recipe for disaster. In reality, it might be exactly what Alpine needs. Alpine currently sits dead last in the championship standings, trailing Haas by 24 points with only 7 races remaining in the point season. It's a far cry from the glory days when the Instone facility was home to championship-winning Benetton and Renault teams. The French manufacturer's decision to abandon their historic engine program and switch to Mercedes power units has only added to the uncertainty surrounding the team's future. Fisichella, who experienced both the highs and lows at Enstone during his racing career, sees potential in this unlikely partnership. Having worked alongside both men during different periods, he understands their strengths and believes their combined expertise could revitalize Alpine's fortunes. His endorsement carries weight. This is someone who won races and championships with these organizations. The timing couldn't be more intriguing. Renault's commitment to Formula One remains questionable, with persistent rumors about their long-term involvement in the sport. Meanwhile, Horner is reportedly seeking a team ownership role similar to Toto Wolff's position at Mercedes, where he combines team principal duties with a significant ownership stake. But not everyone is thrilled about this potential reunion. Wolff himself, who famously called Horner an expletive after his Red Bull departure, made headlines when he compared a potential partnership between Briatore, Horner, and Bernie Ecclestone to a mafia reunion. While said in jest, his comments highlight the controversial nature of bringing together 3 of Formula One's most polarizing figures. The dynamics would be fascinating to watch unfold. Briatore's return has already stirred controversy, particularly regarding his role in Renault's decision to repurpose their engine facility. Adding Horner to the mix would create an unprecedented power structure that could either propel Alpine back to the front of the grid or implode spectacularly. What makes this scenario even more compelling is the current state of team principal musical chairs in Formula One. With Horner's departure, Wolff becomes the longest-serving team boss on the grid. The sport has seen significant turnover in leadership positions, creating opportunities for experienced figures like Horner to find new homes. However, sources suggest Horner isn't actively pursuing any opportunities at the moment, instead focusing on his family after the turbulent end to his Red Bull tenure. His recent holiday in Scotland marked his first public appearance since finalizing his settlement, suggesting he's taking time to consider his options carefully. The potential Alpine partnership raises questions about how such a structure would function. Would Horner and Briatore share responsibilities equally, or would one take precedence over the other? Their different management styles could either complement each other perfectly or create internal conflicts that undermine the team's progress. From Alpine's perspective, bringing in Horner would signal serious ambition and provide much-needed credibility. His track record speaks for itself. and his expertise could be crucial in navigating the technical regulation changes coming in 2026. Combined with Briatore's political acumen and understanding of the sport's business side, they could form a formidable leadership team. As we look ahead to the 2026 season, one thing is certain. Christian Horner's return to Formula One will be one of the biggest stories in motorsport. Whether it happens at Alpine, alongside Flavio Briatore, or elsewhere, his comeback promises to shake up the established order and add another layer of intrigue to an already captivating sport. The stage is set for a dramatic return that could redefine Alpine's future and prove that sometimes the most unlikely partnerships produce the most extraordinary results. Picture this: Carlos Sainz gets a podium with Williams before Lewis Hamilton even sniffs champagne with Ferrari. The Formula One world goes absolutely mental. But here's the thing everyone's missing. This knee-jerk reaction might be the most unfair judgment in motorsport right now. Look, I get it. When you see headlines screaming about Ferrari's biggest mistake, when former champions are questioning whether Hamilton was worth the investment, when team principals are talking about buyer's remorse, LS, it feels like the story writes itself. Sainz wins, Hamilton struggles, Ferrari made the wrong choice. Case closed, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Let me paint you the real picture here. Yes, Sainz grabbed third place in Baku while Hamilton was fighting for scraps. Yes, Sainz has qualified on the front row this season, while Hamilton hasn't. These are facts. But using one weekend to judge a driver swap that involves two completely different teams, different philosophies, and vastly different adaptation challenges? That's not analysis. That's reactionary nonsense. Here's what's really happening. Hamilton currently sits on 121 championship points. Sainz, just 31. That's almost 4 times more points for the Ferrari driver. But apparently, one podium finish erases that entire statistical reality. Hamilton is trailing his teammate by roughly 25%. Sainz is getting beaten by his teammate by more than 50%. Which situation actually looks worse when you step back from the headline-grabbing moments? The adaptation factor is something most people completely ignore. Sainz spent 4 years at Ferrari, his longest stint with any single team. That's significant stability in a sport where muscle memory and instinctive reactions can make or break lap times. Hamilton, meanwhile, spent 12 years with Mercedes, using their power units for 18 years total. Imagine switching from driving on one side of the road to the other after 2 decades. Every instinct, every automatic response, every split-second decision gets rewired. This isn't just about pressing different buttons or learning new terminology. The entire operating system changes. Brake balance preferences, steering characteristics, power delivery, everything shifts. Some experts dismiss this as trivial, saying a racing car is just throttle, brake, left, right. But that oversimplifies what these drivers actually experience when switching teams at the highest level of motorsport. Hamilton has struggled with ground effect aerodynamics since their introduction. But guess what? So did Ferrari initially, so did Mercedes. So did almost every team except Red Bull with their aerodynamic genius, Adrian Newey. These regulation changes don't favor experience. They reset the playing field for everyone. Looking at recent qualifying performances tells another story. Hamilton has only reached the top 10 twice in his last 5 qualifying sessions. That's the real problem. In modern Formula One, race day performance heavily depends on Saturday afternoon. Starting from the midfield or back of the grid makes podium finishes nearly impossible unless chaos intervenes. The financial argument also gets thrown around carelessly. Yes, Hamilton commands a higher salary than Sainz, but Ferrari didn't sign Hamilton for 1 season of podium celebrations. They signed him for championship potential, for that winning mentality, for the experience that comes with 7 world titles. That investment pays dividends when fighting for constructors' championships and driver titles, SON. Not when counting third-place trophies. What makes this comparison even more problematic is the timing. We're judging long-term strategic decisions based on short-term results. Next season brings completely new technical regulations, new engines, new aerodynamics, shorter and lighter cars. The competitive order could shuffle dramatically. Will Sainz's Baku podium matter when everyone starts fresh with new machinery? Even Sainz himself seems uncomfortable with these comparisons. His response was measured and professional, focusing on his own performance rather than engaging in Hamilton debates. He acknowledged that changing teams requires significant adaptation time, that results don't always reflect performance levels immediately. The psychological aspect matters enormously. Hamilton knows he needs to qualify better to compete for podiums. He's openly discussed this challenge. When you're starting races from positions outside the top 10, fighting through traffic, dealing with strategy compromises, podium finishes become increasingly difficult, regardless of your talent level. Here's the uncomfortable truth everyone ignores. Formula One punditry loves dramatic narratives. Former champions questioning decisions makes headlines. Team principals discussing regret generates clicks. But these reactive takes often miss the bigger picture entirely. Hamilton's Ferrari journey should be evaluated across seasons, not weekends. Championship battles, not individual podiums. The ability to extract performance when the car suits his style, not struggling with machinery that doesn't play to his strengths. The real question isn't whether Sainz beat Hamilton to a podium. The real question is whether Ferrari made the right long-term strategic choice. And that answer won't come from one race result in Azerbaijan. Until Sainz wins a championship before Hamilton, until he demonstrates sustained excellence across multiple seasons, until he proves capable of leading a team to titles, this comparison remains premature and unfair. Sometimes the motorsport world needs to step back, take a breath, and remember that great drivers deserve better than snapshot judgments based on single weekends. Hamilton's Ferrari story is just beginning. What's up, Formula One fans? The silly season drama just got absolutely wild, and we need to talk about the bombshell that could completely reshape the 2026 grid. Yuki Tsunoda might be heading to Aston Martin as their reserve driver, and trust me, this story has more twists than Monaco's hairpin turns. So here's what just went down. Felipe Drugovich, who's been sitting on Aston Martin's bench as one of their reserve drivers, just announced he's jumping ship to join Andretti's Formula E team for next season. Now normally, a reserve driver switching to electric racing wouldn't make headlines, but this move has created a domino effect that could save Tsunoda's Formula One career. Let me paint you the picture of why this matters so much. Tsunoda is basically fighting for his Formula One life right now. The Japanese driver replaced Liam Lawson at Red Bull Racing after just 2 races this season, and honestly, it hasn't been the fairy tale comeback story anyone hoped for. Out of 15 appearances with Red Bull's main team, he's only scored points in 5 races. That's rough when you're trying to prove you belong at the sport's highest level. Between Monaco and Hungary, Tsunoda went 7 whole rounds without scoring a single point. 7 rounds. In Formula One terms, that's basically an eternity of disappointment. Sure, he bounced back with a 6th-place finish in Azerbaijan recently, which was his best result for Red Bull, but even that came with drama. He couldn't overtake Lawson's Racing Bull's car for 5th place, despite having fresher tires and DRS assistance. Talk about adding insult to injury. Here's where the story gets really juicy. Reports are swirling that Red Bull is planning to promote Isack Hadjar from Formula 2 to partner with Max Verstappen next season. If that happens, Tsunoda would theoretically drop back down to Racing Bulls, but even that seat isn't guaranteed. Word on the street is that Arvid Lindblad might replace Hadjar at Racing Bulls, leaving Tsunoda and Lawson scrapping for what could be the final available spot. But wait, it gets even more dramatic. Some rumors suggested Tsunoda might get the boot after next month's Mexican Grand Prix, with Hadjar getting promoted for the final 4 races to prep for 2026. Thankfully, those claims have been shot down as completely off base. Still, the pressure is real. Now here's where Honda enters the chat, and this is crucial to understanding why Aston Martin makes perfect sense for Tsunoda. Honda has been Tsunoda's main backer throughout his Formula One journey, but they're cutting ties with Red Bull after this season. Red Bull is launching their own engine program with Ford, leaving Honda to partner with Aston Martin starting in 2026. This isn't just coincidence, folks. Tsunoda actually hinted at this possibility last year when he said Aston Martin could emerge as his most likely long-term destination because of their developing relationship with Honda. The man basically called his own shot 12 months ago. Think about it from Aston Martin's perspective. They've got Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll locked in as race drivers through 2026, so they're not exactly hurting for main talent. But with Drugovich heading to Formula E and Stoffel Van Dorn juggling multiple racing series, they need reliable reserve drivers who understand the Honda power unit philosophy. Tsunoda brings something unique to the table. He's got 4 years of Formula One experience. He's worked extensively with Honda power units during his time with AlphaTauri and Red Bull, and he's proven he can step up when needed. Plus, Having a Japanese driver in your stable when you're partnering with Honda? That's marketing gold, right there. Aston Martin played it coy when asked about their 2026 driver lineup, releasing a statement saying they'll announce their wider driving squad in due course. But reading between the lines, that sounds like they're keeping their options open while negotiations happen behind closed doors. The timing of everything is fascinating too. Drugovich won the Formula 2 championship in 2022, but never got his shot at a full-time Formula 1 seat with Aston Martin. He's been stuck doing test sessions and occasional practice runs, most recently subbing for Alonso during Hungarian Grand Prix practice. Can you blame the guy for wanting to actually race instead of watching from the sidelines? This whole situation shows how brutal Formula 1's musical chairs game really is. One driver's career move in Formula E creates an opportunity that could save another driver's Formula 1 dreams. Meanwhile, young guns like Alex Dunn are supposedly catching Red Bull's attention, with Helmut Marko reportedly meeting with the McLaren junior driver and his representatives. What makes this even more interesting is McLaren's approach to their junior program. They just let Gabriel Bortoleto, their newly crowned Formula 2 champion, sign with Sauber for 2025. They're clearly willing to let talent go rather than warehouse it, which means Dunn might be looking for opportunities elsewhere too. So here's what I think happens next. Tsunoda's Honda connections make him the perfect fit for Aston Martin's reserve role. He gets to stay in Formula 1, maintains his relationship with Honda, and positions himself for potential future opportunities if Alonso or Stroll step aside. Meanwhile, Aston Martin gets an experienced reserve driver who knows their new engine partner inside and out. This story perfectly captures why Formula 1's offseason is sometimes more exciting than the racing itself. Every move creates ripple effects that can change careers overnight. Keep your eyes peeled, because this saga is far from over. When tragedy strikes in Formula 1, it's usually about crashes, championship battles, or political drama. But today's story is different. Today, we're talking about something that touched the heart of every single person in the paddock and millions of fans worldwide. Lewis Hamilton just lost his best friend, and the entire motorsport community is rallying around him in the most incredible way. If you follow Formula 1, you know Lewis Hamilton as the 7-time world champion who's broken barriers both on and off the track. But there's one companion who's been with him through almost his entire Mercedes era and now into his Ferrari journey, his beloved English bulldog, Rosco. And yesterday, that 12-year companionship came to a heartbreaking end. Here's what makes this story so powerful. Hamilton announced that Rosco passed away after suffering complications from pneumonia. But this wasn't just any pet loss. Rosco had been fighting for his life on life support for 4 days. Hamilton had to make the impossible decision that every pet owner dreads: when to let go. And he held Rosco in his arms as he passed away on Sunday evening. Now you might think, okay, it's sad when anyone loses their pet, but why is this getting so much attention in the Formula 1 world? Here's the thing. Rosco wasn't just Hamilton's dog. He became a genuine paddock celebrity. Since 2013, when Hamilton joined Mercedes, Rosco had been a regular fixture in the Formula 1 circus. This dog had more air miles than most racing drivers. He'd been to Monaco, Silverstone, countless Grand Prix weekends, becoming as recognizable as some of the drivers themselves. But what happened next is what really shows you the character of the Formula 1 community. Within hours of Hamilton's announcement, tributes started pouring in from everywhere. And we're not talking about casual condolences here. The FIA, Formula 1's governing body, the same organization that Hamilton has had plenty of disagreements with over the years, sent an 18-word message that cut straight to the heart. They wrote simply, "The FIA is deeply saddened to learn of the passing of Rosco. Our thoughts are with you, Lewis." 18 words that say everything about putting humanity before politics, personal differences aside, when it truly matters. Ferrari, Hamilton's current team, also stepped up immediately with their own tribute, calling Rosco an amazing dog who would never be forgotten. Remember, Hamilton only joined Ferrari this year, so Rosco wasn't technically part of their family for very long, but they treated this loss as if he'd been their mascot for decades. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Jeremy Clarkson. Yes, that Jeremy Clarkson. The television presenter who's been absolutely ruthless in his criticism of Hamilton this season completely changed his tune. Clarkson has been vocal about thinking Hamilton is past his prime, even suggesting that Christian Horner might reject working with Ferrari just to avoid dealing with Hamilton. He's been brutal in his assessments all year long. Yet when faced with real human pain, Clarkson immediately reached out with genuine sympathy, writing, "Really sorry to hear that. It's hell." 4 simple words that show even the harshest critics recognize when something transcends sport and competition. Hamilton's Instagram post about Roscoe's passing has already been liked by more than 9 million accounts. Think about that number for a second. That's more engagement than most race wins get. It shows you the genuine connection people felt with this story, with this relationship between a man and his dog. In Hamilton's emotional tribute, he revealed just how profound this loss was. He described having to make the hardest decision of his life, calling Roscoe a beautiful soul, an angel, and a true friend. He said bringing Roscoe into his life was the best decision he ever made. These aren't throwaway lines. This is raw, honest grief from someone who's usually so controlled in public. What makes this even more poignant is that Hamilton admitted he'd never had to make this kind of decision before. Despite losing his previous dog Coco, he'd never been faced with the choice of ending a pet's suffering. He spoke about feeling a deep connection to everyone who's experienced pet loss, recognizing that this pain is universal and something that bonds people across all boundaries. The timing couldn't be more significant either. Hamilton is in his first season with Ferrari, trying to prove he's still got what it takes at 40 years old, dealing with intense scrutiny about whether his move from Mercedes was the right choice. Through all that pressure and change, Roscoe had been his constant companion, his anchor to something real and unconditional in a world full of politics and performance. This story resonates because it reminds us that behind all the helmets, the million-dollar contracts, and the championship battles, these drivers are human beings who love and grieve just like the rest of us. When Hamilton held Roscoe in his arms for the last time, he wasn't a 7-time world champion or a Ferrari driver. He was just a man saying goodbye to his best friend. The outpouring of support shows something beautiful about the Formula One community. Despite all the rivalry, the politics, and the competition, when real life hits, people come together. From governing bodies, to critics, to fans worldwide, everyone recognized that some things matter more than racing. Roscoe's legacy isn't just about being Hamilton's companion. He became a symbol of joy and loyalty in a sport that can sometimes feel cold and corporate. Rest in peace, Roscoe.